Hi, this is Liz Ellis, the Insatiable Critic, and we are interviewing Ric Meyers today, who is
The Insatiable Eater.
Well, maybe not, but he is a very well-known writer, and some say the expert on Kung Fu films, and we're going to be talking about his latest book, which is Films of Fury, and it also happens to be a documentary, and since I'm all about books and movies,
there we are.
What better topic?
There you go. That's what I feel. I have a new book out too. I didn't bring it over here. It's called For 1 Week Only: The World of Exploitation Films. But that's a completely different. We can do a different show on that one.
That'll be the next episode.
Yeah, there you go.
So, first question I had was, how did you go about deciding which Kung Fu films you wanted to include in this book?
Oh, that was easy. I mean, this book is like my third book on the general subject, although this is specifically on Kung Fu. The first two books were on martial art movies in general, so it was Japanese stuff and the Chinese stuff. And since this was on Kung Fu movies specifically, I wanted to hit in the 360 pages all the high points, not so many of the low points, because I feel that Kung Fu has gotten a really bad rap in this country. And even the big fans of Kung Fu films always think of it as badly dubbed and scratchy film and full screen, not widescreen. And I was always perplexed by this until I realized, well, that's the way they first saw it. But the way I first saw them was in New York's Chinatown, which had 6 movie theaters showing 2 of these movies every week, new ones every week. So that's, I mean, 6 times 2, 12 a week. I mean, I was seeing at least 10 Kung Fu movies a month. Went back in the day when these movie theaters still existed. They don't exist anymore. And I saw them beautifully subtitled and beautiful widescreen, full color, not damaged prints. So I don't think of Kung Fu as scratchy, badly dubbed. I mean, Jackie Chan and Jet Li, when they first came to this country, were perplexed by the way they were filmed. And they didn't realize until later that it was because all the people who are filming them now saw them originally on panned and scanned television prints that were old and junky. And also following the success of Bruce Lee in this country back in the 70s, after he died, the company, Shaw Brothers Studios, that put out the really high quality films, they didn't allow their films to leave China. So the only thing that Americans could get were these horrible rip-offs, Bruce Lee clone movies. So again, crappy, junky, awful movies. I say in the book, in fact, it's as if somebody took John Wayne movies, panned and scanned them, put in terrible dubbing, put them on scratchy film, and sent them to China. China would have the same idea about John Wayne that we do about their films.
Yeah, it was just like putting somebody in a yellow suit and calling him Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee. Well, you know, you see that in Kill Bill and all these other things. So that's why I chose what I did in this. It's all the high points, and it's also all the background on the films, because I've learned so much more about actual Kung Fu since writing my first book on the subject back in the 80s. So that's how I chose them. I wanted them to be glorious.
Glorious.
Yes, I didn't want all the crap. I will mention some crap when it's really special crap. like One Arm versus the Flying Guillotine, or Shaolin Invincibles, which is still one of my favorite crappy movies, where apes get up on their hind legs and start doing kung fu. I mean, it's just such a fun movie, so insane. So I'll mention those, but for the most part, it's the best of the best.
Cool. Now, speaking of your previous book, you mentioned in the introduction in this book that some of the material was recycled from your first 2 books, which are martial arts movies
from Bruce Lee. Let's do, Go, you got it? Go ahead.
Yep.
Martial art movies.
From Bruce Lee to
the ninjas.
And the 2001 update, which is great martial arts movies from Bruce Lee to Jackie Chan and more.
That's right, and more. They made me put in the and more. And they made me put in the ninjas on the first one. I didn't want to put ninjas on the cover on the first one. And on the remake, on the remix, they wanted me to put in and more. They also wanted me to put Van Damme on the cover. And I said he's never made a great martial art movie. So they replaced him with Michelle Yeoh.
Well, I think whenever you see ninjas and you see the word more, everybody just always thinks pirates, right?
And Van Damme. And Van Damme, sure. I know I do. But anyway, so I did recycle some material. And so what's your question?
So my question is, what helped you decide what to leave in and what to leave out?
Oh, that was easy. I mean, whenever it was still right and I couldn't improve upon it, then I kept it the way it originally was.
Mm-hmm.
But if I could say more about it, if I had more insight, if I had more knowledge, if I had more information, new interviews, all the rest of it, because it's been 10 years between this book and the previous book, so since then I've interviewed a lot of people and I've appeared on so many DVDs as an audio commentary or an interviewer, so I had new material on a lot of, you know, Jackie on Jet and Stephen Chow, Chow Yun-Fat, Michelle Yeoh, so that all went in new, but when it was still valid and there was nothing more I could really say and nothing I could improve upon, nothing I could make clearer, then I left it the way it was.
Okay.
I just took it and went, okay, put it in. Put it in the way it is, just shine it up a little bit.
Right, right. I gotcha.
But there's a lot of, I would say it's like 50-50. But it's interweave. Sometimes there's paragraphs literally that are changed, the beginning and the end of the paragraph or the middle of the paragraph. And you know, if somebody wants to do that study, they can, but I doubt it. I doubt anybody would want to sit there and go, well, that word, he used that "the" in the other book. So that's how I made that decision.
Okay. And so I've seen the documentary films of
Fury,
the Kung Fu movie.
You saw a movie. You saw a work print of it. We have a finished print, which I haven't even seen yet, which will be premiering at the San Diego Comic-Con in July. Depending on when you're watching this, it's July 21st, 2011 at 7:45. Although we'll have some previews. We'll have new exclusive previews being made now by filmmakers all over the country as coming attraction trailers, and then we'll be showing the movie, and then I'll have still 90 minutes left to do my usual Kung Fu extravaganza, my 14th year at the San Diego Comic-Con, doing the 3-hour San Diego Comic-Con superhero Kung Fu extravaganza.
So buy your tickets, folks.
Too late. You can't. No, forget it. They're all sold out anyway. But if you're at the San Diego Comic-Con, come to the show, because there's so much going on that night. It's so frustrating. There's 2 shows going on with my Chris Hardwick and with Doug Benson going on at the same time as my show, and it's kind of like I'm going, well, I'm going to show the movie now. I'm going to run out and see Chris Hardwick. I'll be back. I used to do that. I would show an entire movie at the Comic-Con and go out and do something, then come back before the end of the movie. So yeah, fun. But anyway, so if you're coming to San Diego Comic-Con, 7:45 Thursday night. Room 6A, San Diego Comic-Con Convention Center, San Diego Convention Center. I'm doing my show.
So, the movie.
The movie.
You had mentioned that you felt the book was
100%
you.
Right.
And the movie was
not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, how much of the film do you feel like stayed true to your vision of the book?
Well, I wrote the movie first. They approached me to write, direct, and produce the movie back in 2008, but they weren't offering me enough money. So I just decided not to produce it and direct it. Now I'm kind of sorry. I wish I had. Even though I would have been in horrible debt now, and we would have been doing this interview in an alley somewhere in a cardboard box. But so then they asked me to write it instead of direct it and produce it. So I could write it, sure. I wrote it for a nice chunk of change as opposed to doing 3 things for the same amount of money. So the situation that we come to is that had I directed the movie, it would have been my approach, and it's just knowledgeable. In other words, I've had 30 years of study of both Kung Fu and Kung Fu movies. However, the 2 directors they replaced me with, not replaced me, they hired 2 directors when I said I wouldn't direct it, they didn't replace me, they're the guys. They have much less, and they'll agree with this. They're great filmmakers, they're great guys, they're much younger than me, and they have limited knowledge of what Kung Fu is and what Kung Fu isn't. Then again, everybody has that. Even Kung Fu Panda 2, the sequel of the Kung Fu Panda, ignored my lessons and defined Kung Fu as something that it is simply not, which was fighting and martial arts. Kung Fu is not fighting and martial arts. So these guys, the great Andy Robinson, the great Andrew Corby, directed the movie from their point of view, their standpoint, which was, oh, this is all new to us. So they've made a movie essentially for themselves, which good filmmakers should do. But that's a movie about the subject matter, which this is new to us. While the version, the book version is, this is not new to me. Let me put it properly, this is not new to me. And it's kind of like, this is kind of my viewpoint. This is why it's 100% me, because I'm sort of like, I'm taking the tact I think that you're trying to avoid for the movie, which is, you people are wrong. You're wrong and I'm right. And read this and it'll tell you what you do. Why don't you do it the right way? The movie doesn't do that. The book kind of does. But not really. It tries to be entertaining. What I'm doing is running through the history. We start basically, I start at the beginning of time, but the actual Kung Fu movies start officially sort of like 1966, or maybe even 1969, although the first martial art film was like 1919 or something. But anyway, so I'm running through the history of Kung Fu movies, going, oh, look at this, isn't this great, this is fun, this is great. Oh, and then I'll stop and go, and what you might not understand is, and then I'll do, that's why I have the beard, so I can do this. So I can go, oh, you see, this is what, oh, and originally, they were thinking of using me as the host for the movie, which was this specific little character, which was drawn for me after I did a seminar for Nickelodeon, who's doing the television Kung Fu Panda show. Still not set yet. They've got 2 years worth of episodes, and they still haven't scheduled it yet. But be that as it may, we were going to use that guy, but then instead they turned and used that guy. I don't know if you can see him over there, who's sort of like a Quentin Tarantino kind of guy, because they wanted, again, if I were directing it, it would be my point of view, but the directors wanted more of their point of view, which is the younger guy. So he's more of a, oh, this is awesome and kick-ass, and I'm in the background. I wish I was at one point. I wish just in one sequence I was in the background, this little guy going, oh no. But anyway.
So I felt that the documentary, the movie, was really geared towards people that didn't really know anything about Kung Fu.
Novices, that's the director.
And was that the audience that you were aiming for with your book?
No. Actually, my book is aimed for everybody. My book is aimed for novices and veterans. And I've gotten very nice reactions and very nice reviews, because even the veterans say, oh, I learned something I didn't know before. Because unlike most everyone else, I have access to Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Chow Yun-fat, Sammo Hung, everybody, Michelle Yeoh. So in the book, and that was the other thing that drove me kind of crazy, is that a year after I finished the script, I get a call.
Crazy like, wah!
Yeah, exactly. Crazy like, wah! Really, very much like that, in fact. I get a call from the producer, the wonderful Tom Coleman, and he said, I've seen all the other documentaries on this subject, and all the interviews are terrible, so we're not having interviews in our movie, we're having animation. We're going to do animation bridges, cartoon bridges between the chapters. And I went, because I was so looking forward to going to Hong Kong and interviewing all these guys again, and getting them on record. I mean, going to all these guys you see on the cover, who I chose purposely, and saying and telling and asking them the questions they always should have been asked. Yes, including Poe. I would have gotten Poe into it without question. But all the other guys from Hong Kong, and we didn't get to do any interviews. So all the interviews are in the book. And now I'm hoping, and at the present time, we're still planning and trying to work out a way for me to go to Hong Kong and do the interviews anyway, and do a supplement to the documentary, and a DVD on the DVD extras, where I go to Hong Kong and do all the interviews.
That would be awesome.
That would be incredibly awesome. So, did I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Sometimes I forget.
And I also noticed that the categorizations in the book are similar in the movie.
Yeah.
Was that, how much of that was your influence?
It was completely my influence, because the whole idea was that they wanted to say, the producers and the directors wanted to say that the movie was based on my book. But I didn't have this book at that time, so they said it was based on the other books. So when I did the original screenplay, I wrote basically a book in my head that I based the screenplay on, and then once the screenplay was finished and the direction started and the production started and I wasn't involved with it, I said, well, why not write the book? I have time. So that's what I did. It was kind of backwards. That's happened a couple of times in movie history, where the book was written after the movie, but this is one of those circumstances.
So let's say you have someone that has never seen any Kung Fu, doesn't know anything about Kung Fu, but they to know, at least in terms of a movie. What's the movie that you would recommend them to watch first?
Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda it's easy to go down. It's sugar, you know, spoonful of sugar. Helps the medicine go down. It is absolutely accurate. The Kung Fu is absolutely accurate. And the Chinese government put out an official decree reprimanding its own cinema for not doing it first. So it's a good little thing, especially for Americans to start with. And then you go to Hero and Crouching Tiger and Shaolin Soccer and Once Upon a Time in China and all the rest of them. But you know, just for an American, you know, because great Kung Fu is the biggest problem that both the filmmakers for the documentary had, as well as filmmakers in America have, is that real Kung Fu does not look badass. Real Kung Fu kind of looks silly. It also kind of looks supernatural. I mean, I see this again and again and again in the way Americans will look at real Kung Fu and go, well, Americans won't accept that. That's fantasy. That's superhero stuff. That's not real action. And, you know, and everybody in China's going, oh, yeah, it is. We actually do it this way. And the greatest Kung Fu...
China's mystical.
Well, it's exotic and other things. Inscrutable. No, that's the Japanese. But it'd be that as me. I love that South Park, and during this previous season, did an episode of how Americans still don't know the difference between Japanese and Chinese. And that's one of the problems I had with the movie. That I kept on, my notes almost always entailed, that's Japanese, not Chinese. As I said to when I went to do my first seminar for DreamWorks on the original Kung Fu Panda, I asked the production team, have you done any research on Kung Fu already? And they said, yeah, we watched Seven Samurai. And I went, well, you're making a baseball movie and you're watching football films. And I constantly make that comparison. If you've ever heard the great routine that George Carlin does on the difference between baseball and football, it's brilliant, but it also is the difference between Japanese martial arts and Chinese Kung Fu. So it's not the same sort of stuff. So there we go. Did I answer the question? Forgot it. Okay, good. Completely forgot the question.
Well, one nice handy-dandy little feature of the book is in the back, there is top 100 Kung Fu movies
of all time.
Of all time. How did you get it down to that 100?
It was easy. It was
narrow
easy.
it down. I mean, just what criteria did you use? Just besides, I think this is cool.
I went through. Well, I never said I thought this was cool. Cool was one of the ingredients. But as I keep telling people, there are a lot of movies with good Kung Fu that are lousy movies. There's also many more movies that have great martial arts, but are terrible films. Virtually every movie made in Thailand, every martial art action movie made in Thailand, great martial arts, terrible movie. So I always started with the movie. I started with the movie had to be good. And then I said everything else. But again, Kung Fu is a self-improvement system that utilizes both internal and external aspects, martial and healing applications. So as Jackie Chan says in the new Karate Kid, which of course is actually the Kung Fu Kid, it's like calling the movie about a kid learning baseball, the football kid. Okay, understood. Jackie Chan does, that is accurate in terms of how it teaches Kung Fu. He says at one point, Kung Fu is life. And it might seem dramatic to you, but anybody who knows Kung Fu knows that, yes, it is life. As the one thing that I love that the two Andys, the directors, did on the documentary, is that while I defined Kung Fu, the word Kung Fu, as hard work, that's how it's defined, and in the otherwise terrible movie Forbidden Kingdom, they define it as concerted effort toward a specific goal. They define it very wisely as human achievement. Kung Fu actually can be translated, the words, as human achievement. So it's not fighting, it's not martial arts, that's wushu. The Chinese word wushu means martial arts. It's Kung Fu is human achievement. Therefore, the movies that I chose all had to rest on that definition of what Kung Fu was. And so I just simply went through, being that I've been studying this and watching these movies for more than 30 years now, I just knew it. I mean, I practically did it from memory. I didn't, this has to be, this has to be, this has to be, this has to be. And the book, and what's nice is that list is at the end of the book. And once you read the book, you sort of go, yeah, well, that's the list, all right. That has to be it. 1978 was the best year. You go look at it, the most